In 2005, when the superhero movie craze was really starting to take off, Fantastic Four were introduced to us on the big screen for their first theatrical movie, where fans of Marvel's oldest superhero team can finally see this unique family of superheroes realized in a motion picture. However, this rendition of Fantastic Four wasn't viewed as being quite so fantastic upon its release. To be honest, it's gotten the reputation of being a bit of a crap sandwich. And not even a crap sandwich with the good bits like ketchup. No, just an awful, unsavory crap sandwich. But to heck with that, I still really enjoyed this movie and find it to be lots of fun. So was Fantastic Four unfairly judged by a cynical world, or is it indeed a movie that is just too loud and silly beyond words? Well, today we, as in you and I, are going to try and find out by looking into 10 things that you didn't know about the Fantastic Four movie of 2005. So let's throw another failed superhero movie on the Barbie as we check it out. Number 10. The Origins of Fantastic Four. It was 1961, and Marvel Comics was born. It was formerly Timely Comics, which evolved into Atlas Comics. But now the publication had taken off in its final form, of which it would be famously known for. However, the comic brand needed a hook, something to really entice young readers and capture their imaginations. At that time, one of the biggest selling comics came from rival comic company DC, with their comic book issues of Justice League, which of course was a lineup of famous superheroes, which made Stan Lee, the editor and chief at Marvel, and artist Jack Kirby to come to the conclusion that making a superhero team is the way to go. So Fantastic Four was created, a superhero family who, while on a space mission, get bombarded by cosmic rays, which gives them superhuman powers and abilities. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, who now has the ability to stretch his body. His wife Sue Richards, aka the Invisible Woman, who, like her name implies, can become invisible. Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who can engulf himself in flames without getting hurt and even has the ability to fly. And finally, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, the lovable, monstrously altered member who now has flesh of stone and superhuman strength, who would get the catchphrase, "It's clobbering time." The Fantastic Four may often be shown as a dysfunctional family at times, but they were bonded by their obscure powers, with them still caring for each other as a close-knit family. And in their adventures, they would go up against many supervillains, including the mask-wearing Dr. Doom. Although over the years, it seems that one of the biggest battles associated with the Fantastic Four was who actually created them, as Stan Lee has claimed that it was mainly his creation and that Jack Kirby mainly helped out with the illustrations. Likewise, Jack Kirby throughout his life would also suggest that the Fantastic Four was mainly his creation. Even historians have gotten in on the case to try and discover who played what part in the creation of Fantastic Four. But you know what? The way I see it, it was Jack and Stan. No need to dissect the tiny details. Really, they were both influential with the creation. Regardless, Fantastic Four was a success and put Marvel Comics on the map, with other well-known Marvel superheroes following in suit, including Spider-Man, X-Men, Iron Man, and the Incredible Hulk, and so on. In 1967, the Fantastic Four would leave the comic book pages for the first time to star in their very own cartoon, which was produced by Hanna-Barbera. Then in 1978, there was a new Fantastic Four cartoon series, appropriately called The New Fantastic Four. Now I remember this one as a kid, and I was really confused as to why the Human Torch was replaced with a robot called Herbie. I guess it was a licensing issue, but come on, no one wants to see Herbie the robot. Bring on the Human Torch. Oddly, and I do mean oddly, The Thing got his own spin-off show, which was a joint show with the Flintstones, of all things, called Fred and Barney Meet the Thing. And finally, yet another animated series in 1994, which was part of a popular rise of Marvel-based animated shows at that time, which included the X-Men and Spider-Man. So the Fantastic Four could find its place in animation format. However, live-action movies was a whole other ballgame, leading to one of the most unique and strangest chapters in superhero movie history. Number 9. The Long Road to a Fantastic Four movie. German producer Bernd Eichinger, who also produced The Neverending Story, really had his sights set on making a Fantastic Four movie, as early as 1983. He was told by Stan Lee that if he wanted to buy the Fantastic Four rights, he would have to wait a few years till the rights were available, to which Eichinger did eventually buy the Fantastic Four rights, supposedly for as low as $250,000. Warner Brothers and Columbia Pictures were interested in making a Fantastic Four movie with Eichinger, but felt that the budget was too low and were scared off. Now, the rights were going to expire in 1992, and there was still no Fantastic Four movie. Eichinger asked for an extension of his lease, but he was denied. So in order to keep the rights, Eichinger had to make a movie, and fast, to which he teamed up with King of B-movies himself, Roger Corman, which would lead to the creation of the unreleased 1994 Fantastic Four movie, which was made super cheap for $1 million. Despite the movie's director and cast of this Fantastic Four movie going on tour to promote the movie, they had no idea there was never an intention of releasing the film. It was solely made for the purpose of obtaining the rights. And yeah, look, personally, that just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, it may have been cheap, but it still actually looks pretty impressive for its budget. And it kinda sucks that all that hard work that was put into the movie by people who genuinely thought that it would be an actual release had gone to waste. However, this abandoned Fantastic Four film has become something of an obscure anomaly, a curiosity that is frequently sought after by fans of both the superhero genre and lost cinema. Number 8. 20th Century Fox takes charge. At the time the unreleased Fantastic Four movie was made, movie studio 20th Century Fox were keen to make their own Fantastic Four movie. So Marvel, along with producers Avi Arad and Ralph Winter, paid for the negatives of the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, so they can keep the print of the movie locked up and out of sight, in order for them to work with 20th Century Fox to make an actual, intended to be released Fantastic Four film, with an appropriate budget. Jump to 1995 and Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire director Chris Columbus was hired to write and direct a Fantastic Four movie, and he teamed up with GoldenEye scriptwriter Michael France in order to develop the script. But Columbus decided to walk away from directing duties, where instead his production company 1492 would co-produce the film. According to IMDb, Columbus, whose company was now overseeing the production, as mentioned, wanted the movie to go more balls to the wall with its comedic tone, to be more in line with the campy 1960s Batman TV show. In fact, many directors who would subsequently be considered to direct the movie all had a history of making comedy movies. Heck, even its eventual director Tim Story has a lineup of comedy films under his belt. However, it was Story who insisted to Columbus to tone down the comedic elements, citing Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, in that superhero movies can have humor but also be taken seriously, and have serious elements. And yes, there is lots of wacky humor in the released film, and I wonder if that does go back to Chris Columbus's original intentions. And I think the humor in the Fantastic Four film did turn people away. But hey, just imagine, the movie probably could have been even more outrageous with its comedy hijinks. Number 7. An onslaught of directors coming and going. As the production went forward, it seems that this particular production couldn't seem to be able to find a director who would stick around long enough to see the project through, as it was going through directors like it was going out of fashion. Over the following years, several directors would be hired but eventually drop out, including Tommy Boy director Peter Segal, George of the Jungle director Sam Wiseman, then Raja Gosnell, but he dropped out to direct the Scooby-Doo movie instead, as well as future Ant-Man director Peyton Reed. Interestingly, Reed said that his version of Fantastic Four took inspiration from the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night. In other words, A Hard Day's Night, only less Beatles and, well, more superheroes. Wow, just imagine Fantastic Four, the Hard Day's Night version. With directors coming and going, and the release date constantly being pushed back, this surely was one turbulent production. I mean, the only thing that could possibly make this production crazier would be if at one stage they hired, I don't know, a Goonie to direct the movie. Thank God that didn't happen, because that would have been weird. Number 6. Then a Goonie was hired to direct Fantastic Four. So with the Fantastic Four production having more potential directors than I've had hot dinners, the production then looked to former Goonie and Sam from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sean Astin, to direct the film. Astin really wanted to direct Fantastic Four, as he wanted to extend his talents to film directing, and thought that if he directed a Fantastic Four movie, then that would give him some clout. You know, some street cred in Hollywood, so to speak. And it did seem that negotiations were going forward, however the studio were a bit dismayed by the fact that he hadn't directed a movie before, and so these plans didn't go through. Finally, Tim Story was hired as director, as the studio was impressed with his action comedy Taxi, which he also made for Fox. That, and he was a fan of Fantastic Four. So the production now had a director. But then there was the script, which was a whole different animal. Comic book writer Sam Hamm, who also worked on the script for the 1989 Batman, was hired to make rewrites to the script. But a few years later, Twin Peaks co-creator Mark Frost was then hired to also make rewrites, and he would be credited alongside Michael France, who was previously working on a script with Chris Columbus. But Wikipedia suggests that Simon Kinberg, who also wrote several X-Men movies, did some uncredited work on the script, as well as director Tim Story himself, on the account that Story saw the Pixar movie The Incredibles and thought that the movies were going to be too similar, and so changes would have to be made. It supposedly was also Story who wanted Fantastic Four to be a special effects heavy movie. Now granted, a lot of special effects would be needed. I mean, we're dealing with superheroes who can stretch and fly around in flames. But yeah, the movie is quite heavy on CGI and loud action set pieces. Probably more than your average superhero movie of that time. So do all the glossy effects make for a fun popcorn movie, or are they all just obnoxious eye candy? Well, that all depends on the beholder. Number 5. Casting possibilities. So with the production now on track, the task was now at hand to find actors to play the iconic parts of the Fantastic Four and their nemesis, Doctor Doom. When Chris Columbus was at the helm of the movie, he really wanted real-life married couple at that time, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, to star as Reed Richards and Sue Storm. When Sean Astin was in negotiations to direct the movie, according to Wikipedia, he envisioned Christina Aguilera as Sue Storm. IMDb offers some other insights into who could have been cast in the Fantastic Four movie, including Paul Walker as Johnny Storm, but the part would be cast with Chris Evans. Now he seems familiar. Oh yeah, that's right, he's that guy from Not Another Teen Movie. John C. Reilly and James Gandolfini were considered for Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, but the part went to Michael Chiklis. When it came to Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, actors being sought out were Hugh Jackman, George Clooney, Brandon Fraser, and Mads Mikkelsen auditioned, but the role went to Welsh actor Ian Griffith. As for Sue Storm, some of the candidates include Charlize Theron, Kate Bosworth, Julia Stiles, Scarlett Johansson, but it was Jessica Alba who was cast, and I swear that at that time, many teenagers had a poster of her on their wall. And finally, when it comes to the movie's big bad Doctor Doom, actors considered were Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr., but the part went to Australian actor Julian McMahon. Incidentally, Julian McMahon is the son of former Australian Prime Minister William McMahon. Quite a twist, huh? Number Fantastic Four. Filming fiasco. Despite being set in New York City, Fantastic Four was filmed in Canada, namely Vancouver, British Columbia. Sadly, during the shoot, Jessica Alba suffered a kidney infection, which got so bad during the filming of the scene at the space station, she nearly fainted. Michael Chiklis found it very uncomfortable wearing his Thing suit, which consisted of big, bulky, and no doubt very heavy prosthetic bodysuit. In fact, he would even have to wear big prosthetic teeth. Really, the only time the suit came in handy was when filming on the streets of Vancouver during the winter, in which the suit actually kept him warm. One day his wife turned up on the set to visit him and she saw him in his Thing costume for the first time, completely unprepared, and was so shocked with what she saw, she completely freaked out and lost her composure and needed assistance to be escorted off the set. Naturally, being Welsh, Ian Griffith would have to learn to speak with an American accent, but he really struggled with this as the script would be constantly changing, to which he would constantly be having to learn new lines and thus try to incorporate these lines with his fake American accent, which apparently was easier said than done. For the scene where Steve Richards and Sue Storm were talking on the pier, the actors weren't even together to film this scene. Presumably they were performing their lines with a stunt double, with the footage being edited together. That's why when we see a front view of Jessica Alba, her hair is blowing in the wind. But when we see the back of her hair is dead still. In fact, when Griffith shot his scenes for this interaction, he was filmed at Vancouver, and Alba shot her scenes in New York. Despite the fact they're meant to be talking to each other, they were in completely different cities. Ah, the magic of the movies. The one person who I think seems to be having the most fun in the movie is Chris Evans, who plays the part as a sort of obnoxious loudmouth frat boy full of enthusiasm and a zest for life, who is equally charming as he is a smartass. He supposedly ad-libbed a huge chunk of his lines during the shoot. And one of the biggest action scenes in Fantastic Four is the scene where chaos erupts on the Brooklyn Bridge, of which took 5 months to shoot. And considering the movie was being filmed in Canada, a huge chunk of the bridge would actually have to be recreated. Yep, it's an explosive scene where the Fantastic Four save the day from a disaster that they pretty much created. Yay! Woohoo! Yeah! Number 3. Deleted scenes. So there are tons of deleted scenes that didn't make it into the final film, but I'll address some of the ones that stood out to me. One is a scene where Doom is up to no good and tries to get Johnny to ride in his limo with him, and he does so by propositioning him with a heap of ladies in said limo. Yeah, good luck filming that scene in this modern day and age, where Doom tries to detach Johnny from the rest of the team by trying to get him to sell out with merchandising like action figures, which is ironic as the Fantastic Four movie had, well, a ton of merchandising. There was also quite a sinister scene where Sue meets Doom at a restaurant, where he is really antagonistic towards her in regards to her working relationship with Reed, where he gets so angry he creates a mini shockwave. I like this scene as it shows you that Julian McMahon had it in him to be a truly sinister and threatening Dr. Doom, even if the script did go in a misguided direction. There's a scene where Reed and Sue are at a planetarium, where the characters are really connecting, where Reed goes to kiss Sue, only she goes invisible. Now this scene was in the movie in some parts of the world, however for some reason it skipped my part of the world. There's a scene where Reed proves to Sue that he can be a tough and protective guy by stretching his face to look more masculine with a bigger jaw, but to me he looks more like Bruce Campbell. But I think the most baffling deleted scene is an alternative to the previous one, where Reed somehow uses his stretching ability to morph into Hugh Jackman's Wolverine from the X-Men movies. I don't know if this is suggesting a shared universe, or if this is an in-joke, and it doesn't even make any sense. Like, I get Reed can stretch parts of his body, but how is he able to instantly grow hair and a beard to look just like Wolverine? Either way, have fun seeing this in your nightmares. Number 2. Fantastic Four had to compete against Batman. 2005 was a massive year for franchise movies, as that year also saw the release of Revenge of the Sith, Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds. In fact, Fantastic Four's release date had to be changed so it wouldn't be competing against War of the Worlds. It was also a massive year for superhero/comic book movies, with the likes of Elektra, Constantine, Sin City, and V for Vendetta. However, the production must have felt pretty confident with Fantastic Four, as there was one thing it didn't count on, which was Batman Begins. Now granted, the previous Batman movie, Batman and Robin, was a flop, so there probably wasn't much concern. However, Batman Begins comes out and was a massive success. It was also a dark and gritty reboot, which took itself very seriously, with it feeling more like a crime thriller than a superhero movie. Suddenly the world now had gone crazy for this new kind of dark, edgy superhero movie, where characters must be brooding and tortured. And well, Fantastic Four just isn't that movie. Bird poop jokes and all. Unfortunately for Fantastic Four, it came out just under a month after Batman Begins, meaning by the time it came out, audiences were now thirsty for dark and brooding superhero movies. I think this caused Fantastic Four to suffer with the critics and audiences, as Fantastic Four feels more like a callback to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, which themselves were a callback to the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Batman Begins made just over $40 million more than Fantastic Four, but it generally got rave reviews from both critics and audiences. Although I think some of the humour in Fantastic Four was ill-advised, as well as some of the plot points, like having the Thing manage to get a girlfriend because she's blind, I do still think it's lots of fun. I think it was trying to appeal to teenagers and it was trying to be cool and hip. It has a sort of kinetic MTV feel about it, but I don't think it's a bad movie. It has lots of energy and moves at a super fast pace, constantly flashing pretty effects in our faces like a hyperactive kid on a sugar high. But it's never boring and it is lots of fun. Once again, may have gone overboard with some of the nonsensical plot points and silly humour, but hey, look at some of the silly humour we've seen in Marvel movies over the years, many of which themselves are considered classics. So I wonder if the fact that it came out so close to Batman Begins may have hurt the movie and its reputation, and if things would have turned out better if Fantastic Four was released first. Personally, I like both types of movies. It depends on the source material and what mood you may or may not be in at the time. Properties like Batman, X-Men, and Judge Dredd absolutely can pull off being serious stories, but comics like Fantastic Four or Superman probably do work better as light-hearted, fun romps. Besides, they would go on to try and do a moody and serious Fantastic Four movie, which led to that dreary 2015 Fant 4 shit film. Ew, yuck, ew. What a disaster that was. Number 1. B-movie madness. So as mentioned, Fantastic Four was released in July 2005, and it made $333.5 million on a budget that sat somewhere between $87 to $100 million. So it was financially successful at the time. It got mixed to negative reviews. It was felt that the movie was uneven, had a bland story, as well as being silly and goofy and generally all over the place. But there were some praises over the movie's razzle and dazzle and overall enjoyment, with Washington Post calling it fun and funky. I think my favourite review comes from Real Views, which said, quote, "This movie is more like a B-grade comic book adaptation than an A-list production that it should have been." And I agree. Although that review sounds like a complaint, I think Fantastic Four is without a doubt, no questions asked, a B-movie. It's an all-out rollercoaster ride popcorn movie, along with all other cliché terms I could use to describe its B-movie status. Now, the harsh criticisms could very well have been a retaliation to Batman Begins as previously theorised, and Fantastic Four is very much a product of its time. You watch it and it's just dripping with 2000 isms. But damn if the movie doesn't have heart and is going all out to entertain you. This movie is seriously throwing everything at you and the kitchen sink in order to give you a good time, basically making it a special effects show to keep the senses happy. But you know what, that's okay, as I do really find this movie to be enjoyable, and at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Enjoyment? The movie isn't going to break ground or have memorable performances, but that doesn't matter. There is always room for silly movies as much as there is for dark, serious ones. If you like more carefree, silly superhero movies like Superman 3 and Batman Forever, then I do think Fantastic Four is right up your alley. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this movie, and that's cool, I get it. You don't have to try and convince me, like, I fully understand why this movie may not be to everyone's taste. But I would also be lying if I was to say that this movie didn't make me smile every time I watch it. So, to me, it's a guilty pleasure. And now that we've had an abundance of serious and dark superhero movies, it's nice to every once in a while have a break and go back to more carefree ones like Fantastic Four. It feels like the movie itself is fully aware of its subject matter, and the movie is saying, this premise is absolutely ridiculous, but you know what? Let's just roll with it and have fun with it anyway. And who knows, maybe now that the movie is nearly 20 years old, my god, where does the time go? It might get that nostalgic factor and appreciation as time progresses. Anyway, I'm Minty, and say what you want to say about the Fantastic Four movie of 2005. I still think it's a lot better than some of the superhero movies and shows that we've been subjected to recently. See ya!